Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Lance and Lauren, and we're bringing you episode 10 of Elevated with Lance and Lauren. Still very redundant. We'll figure that out later. So we're chatting with you guys today on episode 10 about anxiety and overwhelm. And the title of today is, Are you unknowingly choosing habits that lead to anxiety and overwhelm? Mm-hmm. This one's interesting because I think that so many people write off I think that their habits they write off and don't really consider which ones lead to sabotage and which ones do actually produce anxiety and stress and fear and so on and so forth. So hopefully we can kind of share, a few of the things that we teach our clients and some of the things that we have learned ourselves and give them a little bit of some, I guess, a little bit of a reprieve or some better habits. Yeah, some hope, right. So, nevertheless, I know, Lauren and I, we have both battled our own variations of stress and anxiety.
Yep.
Mine, I've had social anxiety and so many different things that are a little bit like, at times that have felt crippling, to where there were times where Lauren literally drove for me for 3 months because I had a severe panic attack in a vehicle. And that just, back then I didn't know what I know now as far as habits to get out of that. And it was scary. It was horrifying going through this stuff. So those are some of the more extreme ones, and some of the less extreme ones are more to do with the day-to-day things of being worried and then just stress eating and just wondering why you can't get yourself together, or wondering why you're snapping at your kids or your husband or your wife because you're constantly feeling in stages of overwhelm or anxiety. Mm-hmm. So I know we've both been through, different stages of that for sure.
Yeah.
So
I had a season of my life that I had, I would definitely classify it as crippling anxiety. Mm-hmm. And I had no tools at the time. And then none, like no tools. I didn't even really, I knew it was anxiety, but all I could think about at the time is, oh my gosh, what if I have to live with this forever?
Right.
Because it just felt like every day I was waking up and it felt like the world was caving in on me every day of my life. And I would somehow, it was weird. Maybe some of you guys have struggled with this if you have had a season of chronic anxiety or if you struggle with chronic anxiety. But I would find that I would wake up and feel like the world was caving in on me. Mm-hmm. And then somehow at about between noon and 2, it would dissipate every day. Yeah. And then I would be back to that cycle as soon as like 4 a.m. in the morning hit up until that time. And it was rough.
Well, and the thing of it is we know now that, when it comes to things like that, we were training ourselves to have these patterns over and over. Mm-hmm. We didn't know anything about pattern interruptions, and we certainly didn't know anything about what we call now neuroassociations. Right. And so there were most likely some sort of, neuroassociations to that time, between this time and this time, that you'd conditioned yourself to feel certain things, and you were perpetuating that cycle without even knowing it.
I definitely had some bad habits then, and we were running a business then, a brick and mortar business, and it was new. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of it, I think, stemmed from that. It was a new season of my life, being a business owner and actually having so much responsibility and growing a business and just trying to figure out how to make that balance in my life, because that wasn't my normal, right? I had worked for someone for so long. Well, so there was that.
A lot of that too, if you recall back, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about today, is that there were some habits. Yep. Yes, there were some bad habits, there were some neglectful habits that I think that were really going on. I know in states, even again, I did an episode maybe a month or two ago after moving back, where I had a severe panic attack where it affected my driving. And what was the big caveat? The big caveat, or the common denominator, was that there all week my anxiety had been elevating, and I wasn't taking the time to really work through those things. Instead, I was just pushing through. Yeah. So with that being said, the very first one that we want to talk to you guys about is that you may not realize that you're putting yourself in states of anxiety, panic, overwhelm. Is one thing in particular is that you might be lacking what we call margin, margin of time. And this is putting you in scarcity mode. And the scarcity mode, what happens is rather than kind of choosing things that are best for you, I'm going to grab the cat here. There we go. Rather than choosing things that are best for you, unfortunately, the things that are better for you, you almost just try and fit in at the end of whatever energy you have left of your day, your month, your week, or just whatever you have left of your physical or emotional and mental. And then you beat yourself up wondering why you're not able to get your act together. Why can't I stick with my diet? Why can't I stick with my workouts? I hate the way I look. I don't feel confident, but yet I can't. Well, one thing is that if you're operating in a place of scarcity, in which case you're putting the things that are important to you at the very end of what you have left, then this is a good reason why. Nobody wants to be treated that way in a relationship. If you were to put your significant other at the very last of everything that you do and hope that you have energy left, your significant other may get the impression that you don't really value them, but this is what we do with all the things that are important to us as well.
So true. Yeah.
So I think that the other thing too is that you got to keep in mind is it's easy to fall into scarcity mode, but one simple thing to do is to use a variation of cognitive behavioral therapy, which is specifically taking action before working on the mind. So basically, we put ourselves in action and the mind follows suit. It's a little bit opposite from the mindset trainings normally. What this is this is a practice of I'm going to do and know that the doing part of it is going to train my conscious or subconscious mind into buying into it. This is where we start saying things about ourselves. I am this person. I am this. I am this. Even before we buy into it. That's the act of doing and allowing the mind to transform. So with that being said, these areas here, if you're thinking, yeah, but I fear and I don't have the mindset for that. The best recommendation that we have both been through is just to start doing it. Schedule your workouts or schedule the things that are important to you. Put those things first and watch what happens. You're going to start seeing that lesser important things that are distracting you start going to the wayside.
Yeah, and if you're someone who wakes up every day and you have a giant task list that is just part of your makeup, I know for me, that is how my day goes. I have, I'm just using wild numbers here, but I have 150 boxes to check off every single day. And those boxes are going to range from unloading the dishwasher to completing all the macro check-ins that Lance and I go over for our clients and getting those sent back. Okay, so this is a wide variety of stuff. But with that said, my 150 task list that I have every day shouldn't grow to 200. And sometimes I'm still guilty of this. I'll see an email come in that I wasn't going to, mess with because it came in at a certain time. And we have, we respond to emails within 24 hours, whatever. I'm using it as an example. But I'll see that, and all of a sudden I see that, and I go to start answering that. Well, that's not a part of today's tasks. And, or a phone call will come in that, was unexpected and it's going to require something of me. Well, that wasn't part of today. And so I would say to those of you who are like me and you're task oriented, make sure that you're not allowing other things that bombard you. That's one of the reasons I hate notifications on my phone, if I'm being really honest.
Yeah.
I actually turned all of mine off. I think this is one of the best things that you can do. I have no notifications that come through on social media. No Facebook Messenger, no Instagram, no Twitter, no this. No, I don't do it. Because the problem is I could not stand to see that little red thing on my phone that told me I had 20 plus or plus 9 or whatever it was. It would overwhelm me and send me an anxiety like that. And so I got so much freedom from turning that stuff off because that began to become my indicator every day, and instead I was reactive to those things versus focusing on the task list at hand that was for Wednesday.
That's the key thing, is what you just said there, is reactive.
Oh yeah.
So one of the things that I wanted to go into was the difference between being reactive versus responsive. So reactive is just like that. You see a notification, and just like Pavlov's dog who rang a bell and the dogs would salivate, you have triggered that same thing to happen. So what's happening is you're feeling pulled and spread in every direction simply because of the fact that you are in constant reaction mode instead of responsive mode. Yep. So reactive mode is to where you're getting some variation of notification and you're responding just like Pavlov's dog without, or let me just say this, you're reacting, you're immediately responding without any thought or without any contemplation of whether this thing you're about to do or respond with is serving you. Whereas responsive mode is to where we stop and analyze the data that's coming in so we can decide how to respond to it. So there's a big difference in there. And one of the keys that Lauren was kind of sharing is that if you get rid of your notifications, this is one tool that will help immediately to put you in response mode instead of reactive mode.
Yep.
And it's huge, guys, because you're going to start noticing that, hey, you're getting more stuff done, you feel less stressed and less anxious, and you actually have more time than you thought possible.
Yep.
It's amazing.
I think that was part of one of the other pieces for me, is that I'm a person that always thinks I'm running out of time. How many of you guys are like that? Tell us down in the comments. It's absolutely silly. Like, for instance, I calendar in my workouts every day, and I have a block of time that I allow myself, because sometimes that top block of time, let's just, for instance, say it's 1:30 in the afternoon, I can't always get my workout in at 1:30, so I have to give myself a buffer, right? But for whatever reason, if I start getting closer to the middle of that bracket of time that I've set up, I start feeling like I'm running out of time. Now, what is the truth? I'm not running out of time. I'm not at all. But sometimes I still have to talk myself through that. Like, Lauren, it's okay that it's 2:30 or 3 and you haven't gotten your workout in. You're going to get it. You've blocked off this amount of time, blah, blah, blah. And I do that for a purpose. So I kind of forgot where I was going with that. Something about time, but I was basically trying to say something to the effect of that if you're a person that struggles with feeling like you are running out of time, make sure that things are calendared in your calendar, like the most important things, and make sure that you're not allowing other people's stuff to come in and monopolize your time, because that's when you're really going to feel like you're running out of time. And I found that happened a lot when I had email notifications on and, all of that. I leave my text messages on, but sometimes I don't answer text right away. I used to feel like I had to respond right away. I don't do that anymore. Like, I may have a text that sits there for 2, 3, 4 hours before I can get to it, because it's not on a priority for this time block. So
one of the other things, too, that I learned quite a few years ago was, and I don't know if John Maxwell, where he originally heard it, but I know that he coined it as the law of the first, or the rule of the first. I'm going to go out on a limb and just say that, because I know that John was a pastor to begin with, I'm going to go ahead and say that it's biblical.
Yeah.
The rule of the first came from the Bible, talking about tithe, which, was essentially a tenth or your first. And so the principle here is, again, whether you follow the Bible or you don't, it makes no difference, because the principles, the philosophies are absolutely sound, and they do yield results that are less anxiety producing and so forth. So, you take that at free will, whatever you want to do with it. But the fact is that if you use the rule of the first, whether you want to, call it John Maxwell's, or you want to use it the tithe principle, this is something that I learned to do many, many years back whenever I first started reading some of these things. Because what I started doing is, if I were to wake up late, for example, this rule is something that helped me. And I remember my dad actually kind of sharing a little bit of this years ago, which is kind of like one of these things of, okay, I'm running late. Which is, if only I can get one thing done here before I leave the house, which thing is most important for today?
Yeah.
And what you're doing is you're basically going, okay, if I only get one thing done. And I remember specifically being in 8th grade this time, waking up frantically 35 minutes late, and we're walking. My brother and I had to walk from our school, or from our house to the school. And I woke up super late, and all I could think of myself is, okay, what matters most? I'm about to go to school. Does it matter, like, getting a shower? Does it matter doing this? Does it matter doing this? And ultimately what I came down with, I've got to have my teeth brushed. I've got to at least make sure that I've got clothes that are clean and that my hair is done.
Did you get a shower?
I don't think that I got a shower.
Oh my goodness.
I may not have gotten a shower.
Wow.
The fact is that I determined, I
something.
changed. Obviously, and here's the thing. This is a joke, but what it is that hopefully this sticks with you. Because in that moment of, oh my gosh, I'm running late, you need to be able to determine which thing is important to you to keep focusing on, so you can turn down the flame on the other burners of things that might distract you.
Yeah.
You only have so much energy and so much focus, and so many of us tend to spread ourselves so thin, and we wonder why we're not ever feeling like we're getting the ball moving. Well, it's because we're not focusing our attention on moving one ball. We're focusing all our attention on moving 50. And so we're only seeing a little micro movement here. When you're seeing micro movements on 50 different balls instead of seeing one, it looks like nothing is happening. So the best thing to do is to do the next part of this, which is to focus on the critical 5. And that is to focus on things that are both urgent and important for each day to get it done. And if it only fits into urgent, but not important, that usually like somebody's bringing something to you. Hey, Lauren, I just got this thing and I need you to check it out, whatever. That's urgent for them, but not important for her. And so she cannot prioritize that until her urgent things and important things are taken care of.
Right.
This takes her out of stress because she's not in reactive mode, but now she's got a system to follow after. Sorry, Susan, I can't do that right now. I've got these things to do. What I can do is fit it in tomorrow. Now what we're doing is we're creating a system that doesn't make me feel bad and doesn't make me feel like I've got to constantly jump through hoops of every person. Instead, now I have this rule that I follow that keeps me on track. Why do I do this? It's not because I'm selfish. It's because of the oxygen mask principle. I put on my oxygen mask and then I can help her and him and her and her. If I don't do that because she's going, help me, and I put this on her, I pass out, I can't do anything else, and I'm not able to do anything. This is how you guys are living your lives, and you're wondering why I can't get fit, why my marriage doesn't feel good, why my work isn't doing better. I used to be a career person, now I can't figure it out. What's going on? All of this. It's what's happening.
So true.
So these are the things, though, that are keeping you from the life that you deserve, and you don't realize that it's causing anxiety. When you're cutting corners, you're choosing things, or you're not choosing to do things that serve you. These, unfortunately, are going to be things that are going to lead to severe anxiety and stress. We know, we've dealt with it specifically.
Yeah.
So, number 3 is a huge, actually, you know what, let's do you want to talk about the not getting enough rest? That's a huge one, which is one of the books that we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. That's probably one of my favorite ones. So I'll just read it as we have it written. But not getting enough rest, and that's social, physical, emotional, spiritual. And
there's a few other ones as well.
Yeah.
I just listed a couple on there.
Yeah, but those are,
one doesn't always do the other.
Right. I would say that this is a huge one. And I'll speak from experience, but Lance and I used to not rest at all.
Right.
We would, when we ran our brick and mortar business for many years, we would train on Saturdays, we would do stuff on Sundays. It got to the point, let me just be really honest and very bold. We were burnt out. We were so burnt out. Not with our clients. We loved our clients. We were burnt out because Lance and I never rested enough and never recharged our battery enough to be able to pour out again and pour into people's lives. Well, lo and behold, that affects your marriage. That affects your fitness. That affects your relationship with your kids. That affects you even wanting to do anything at all. It affects all of it. It just affects everything when you don't rest. So then we have our online business. Now we don't have a building to take care of and all that kind of stuff, praise the Lord. But Lance and I would work on weekends. We would respond to emails. We would be on call 24/7. And it just got to be like, I felt honestly at times like we never had time for each other without feeling like we had a notification or this or that.
We were already spread too thin already.
We're on calls. We talk to new people a lot. You guys constantly see us online. So, but at some point, you have to stop and go, oh my goodness, this is taxing all of my health. It's taxing all of my relationships. It's taxing everything. And so I was doing a Bible devotional, actually. I think it was on anxiety and stuff, but it ended up talking about resting and why if you're not resting, you're actually creating this perpetual state of anxiety and overwhelm for yourself. And it recommended this book that we absolutely love and recommend to everyone, and it's called Sacred Rest. And I'll put a link here for you. It's actually already in there, but you can have that and definitely check it out. It's written by a doctor. This woman is incredibly smart, and she goes into all of the big specific details on why rest is so imperative, and honestly why God created you to rest. So one of the things that Lance and I do, and we actually just started doing this several months ago, but we don't work on weekends anymore, but we specifically on Friday evenings to Saturday evenings, because we always talk to our clients in Facebook, sometimes in our group, on the weekends even, and stuff like that. But from Friday night to Saturday night, we don't do any of that. That's our time. That's our time to rest. It's our time to, chill and do whatever. And it's actually a biblical principle. It's honoring the Sabbath. But it is something that has freed our souls. And we were already resting even prior to that. Yep. But now we're doing that piece
more
of it.
More intentionally and specifically.
That's the key. It's this intentional piece of resting. And so all of that to say that if you are not taking time to specifically rest, your mind, and especially if you're a person, and I guarantee you if you're watching this, you're a person who is a high achiever. So you either run a business, or you've got a really important title, or you're a go-getter, like, or you're a go-getter in your family, you're super mom or super dad. Hey, you still got to rest. Right. You still have to take time to charge your battery, because unfortunately, our counselor gave us this analogy one time, but it's kind of like a checkbook that you just keep writing checks, and eventually you can't cash it because your bank account's empty. And so people keep writing checks, or you keep writing checks, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, I'm negative $4,000. Well, it's because you haven't replenished that. You haven't deposited anything back in, and rest is going to deposit that for you.
Definitely. So the last two that I want to go through with you guys are very, very huge, but they're, and I can't stress it enough. To piggyback on the rest thing, I know many of you guys might be thinking like of only one type of rest, which is like literally slowing down and doing nothing. Yeah. Just to give you a little bit of a sampler of what's in that book, just so that you do take this seriously, I would highly recommend the audio. Yeah. Because you can hear that, and it is actually very soothing and calming. But the cool thing is that she talks about social rest. Yes. With the difference of choosing a type of friend to hang out with versus another type, because of the sort of rest that you need.
Absolutely.
This can only happen when you're intentional and in self-awareness, so that you can understand what you need and what you don't. My point is, if you're writing this off thinking like, okay, cool, I'll take off and sleep. Have you ever taken on a nap and woken up and felt like you just were as emotionally and mentally tired? It's because you gave yourself physical rest when you needed mental or emotional rest or social rest. So the point is, just keep that in mind. That brings me into the next one, though, which is environment or atmosphere, which means that this is a huge one. If this is too chaotic and stressful, we need to choose better environments or atmospheres, or we need to choose habits that help us thrive in that environment if we can't get out of one. So what I mean by that is, if you're working in a toxic environment and you're not able to get out of that environment, then you want to make sure that you're filling yourself back up with things that replenish your subconscious, with things that are true about you. If you've got a boss that's demeaning and negative and makes you feel like you're inadequate and not enough, you need to be refilling yourself with what is true about you so that you're not affected. I would also highly suggest that you begin aligning yourself to try and figure out what might be a better position than one that's so toxic. I understand everybody's situation is different, but I tend to be a little bit more of an idealist on those things, believing that anything is possible as long as you plan and you start setting up some sort of path and pattern to get there. Yeah. So with this being said, I just want to leave you with being very aware of what your atmosphere and your environment are, because again, who you're around, what happens to you in those environments will affect your ability to stay within willpower and discernment and discipline, and it's also going to affect your ability to keep your calm when somebody else does something that might affect you a little bit negatively. Rather, it could be the difference of you responding with no thank you and, go kick rocks or what have you, because you felt like you were attacked because you're spread too thin. The last one that I want to give you is specific to pouring from an empty cup, by this one of never filling up your mind or your spirit with reading or self-development of any kind. So what we're meaning on this one is, we're choosing things for self-development, for audiobooks, for courses, coaches, trainings, you name it, reading the Bible, taking time to meditate. I don't mean the esoteric meditation of clearing one's mind. I mean more of the biblical style of meditation and the scientific meditation of focusing on one specific thing.
Yes.
I would recommend God. That would be a great one to starting to focus on, or something to that effect. The point is that there's a difference between clearing one's mind and focusing on one thing. One of them is dangerous, and one of them leads to improvement of self and better awareness. Absolutely. The other removes your conscience eventually. Anyway, I won't get into that. There's a lot to it.
It's a whole other topic.
It is. And then the very last one, guys, is that if you're not working out or eating to actually fuel or to keep in mind what your body needs, I won't go into all this stuff. There are things on a megahertz level as far as electrical within the foods that you're eating that will affect your brain. I'll do a whole series on that. And also, if you are under or over consuming calories, I won't get into all the nutrition aspect, you are going to be not providing your brain, your mindset with the adequate fuel for your day. Same thing with exercise. In fact, I used to have, there was an individual who's an entrepreneur that I worked with. It's about 13 years ago, who was a client of mine, and he actually stated that he refused to ever partner with any entrepreneur or business person that did not work out to some degree, whether running, resistance training, or something. And I asked him, I knew where he was going, but I said, well, why is that? I about said his name. I said, why is that? And he replied with, because I've done it. And these individuals, unfortunately, tend to be in reactive mode because they're not being intentional with their bodies and so on and so forth. It's not meant to be insulting. It's meant to state that this individual, who was a multi-millionaire, would actually not work with somebody. He would lose money possibly not working with somebody or take on a client if they were not fit-minded and fit-bodied. Yeah. That's how much emphasis he put on it. It does. It really does. So I hope that this has been helpful for you guys. We love doing ones like this. And again, I know that these are like, some of these are like, wow, there's a lot of things to change. Pick one or two things to focus on and just see if you can notice a 1 to 2% change in your happiness, your mood, or your stress levels. And those will begin reinforcing new habits and behaviors too.
Yep,
so
absolutely.
I hope that helps you guys. Lastly, the link above, you can get the book, but also the link above, you can subscribe to our e-journal that is called Elevated. So be sure to click that also, and you'll get tons and tons of cool things in there. You guys rock. Thanks so much for tuning in. Anything else you want to add?
No, we'll see you on the next one.
Awesome. We'll see you guys on the next one. Have an awesome day.